Hey everybody, how we doing?
Hey, I think we went to a Be Right Back screen for a second, but we're good.
Well, we're back.
We're
We've
back.
been
That was
waiting all week for this,
it's a really like
right?
micro millisecond Be Right Back, but it's fine.
Well, okay. Well, here it is. Ready, set, data. We have O'Grady, the software engineer, Anthony, the data engineer, and Lee Markham, database extraordinaire. Sounds like
Extraordinaire.
you extraordinaire. Yeah, you guys. So you guys doing good?
Yeah, hopefully everybody had a good fourth. We
I did.
I don't know if you guys tuned in and watched the VOD, but I had the fireworks that were behind my house streaming on the on our Twitch here. It
Nice.
ended up
Super
being
cool.
really good. Yeah, I don't know if anybody has a chance, go back watch the VOD. Just you can like scroll through it until you see a bunch because I think it's about 20 minutes in because I was also shooting them off, so I just set it up and left. Um,
Yeah,
so
I
yeah,
checked it out
yeah, it's
for a little bit, but I was literally at the river. Those of you not around here, St. Charles, we have fireworks at the river.
Yep.
But yeah, I was actually at the river. So like, I try to just look at Switch for a little bit, but
yeah. I
had the
figured
whole
it's for
fam there.
people mostly out of state that don't get as many fireworks as we do. Because around us, it's well, if you see it, it's just literally nonstop. There was not a
Mm-hmm.
second in between fireworks for 5 or 6 hours. So it was pretty
Super
awesome.
cool.
Yeah, that's probably
Yeah.
true. Yeah. Yeah, it
So
was pretty crazy out here. It's funny because I waited to go to bed. Oh, I was going to go to bed around 10 o'clock because that's my normal bedtime because, I'm an old person.
yeah,
And
I
about the
wish I could
time
stay up that late.
I got, about the time I got ready to go to bed, I went upstairs and started getting ready and some more fireworks were going off. And I was like, oh, yeah, right. That's going to be going on for a while. So went downstairs, played the PS3 for a little bit,
Ooh,
and then
nice, nice.
then went to bed. So yeah,
PS3. That sounds like an antique. How long has that been around?
a couple of years.
Years.
PS3 came out. Oh man, I don't remember. It's been a
It's been
while.
a while.
It lasted a
Hey, you know
very,
what?
very long time. As far as like being a current generation, PS3 was a current generation for a very long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Well, I have a major problem because I really love the 2013 college football game, which I
Yeah.
think it's not available on PS4, just the PS3. So if I'm gonna have to look that up, but if I ever can't get another PS3 or I lose this disc or something, I'll be sad because I won't be able to play my favorite and basically only game.
so you could
Uh,
buy a PS4 and play it on there.
is it backward compatible though? I didn't think it was. I didn't think it would let me do that.
Some of them are. I don't
Okay.
remember. I don't remember the full specs on
So
them. I'm obviously not a console gamer. Sorry.
or you can, push comes to shove, you can emulate it. There's
Does
emulators, I
is it
believe.
on Steam?
Oh, okay.
You know,
An
a lot
emulator.
of
I don't know
Or
about Steam.
I say a lot of older
These are
games are
good
still on
ideas that
Steam.
would save me from a major crisis. I've actually already bought a second PS3 because the first one took a lot of abuse, including a dog who would race across the basement and snag the cords
it's
Oh,
just
the
trying
dog.
to
and
play.
yeah, and then sometimes pull the console off into the ground. So that was
Been there.
awesome. But anyway,
So I
That,
do have
that's
one sitting in my living room that my son plays, but it sounds like a F-18. So probably needs like some vents cleaning and maybe new thermal paste and all that stuff, but still
yeah.
works.
well, I was picking on you about the antique joke, but I got you beat. Yeah, once, maybe twice a year, we get on an old game that we like to play. It's called Alpha Centauri, and it's older than my oldest son, who's 20, and he happens to be a fan of the game. So we try to play it. The problem is we get a couple hours in, we get the late game, it started crashing. So the game's
Alpha
already on
Oh,
life support,
Centauri.
as old as it is. Yeah, Alpha Centauri.
Was
It's a
that Star
4X
Trek
game.
reference?
No, but it's a space reference. Alpha Centauri is a star system.
Oh, okay.
Um,
That's they probably
yeah,
used it in Star Trek, considering it's a real star system. That would make sense.
yep. but it's a
I go
Sid Meier
right to
game. So
science
like,
fiction. It's
yeah, like what was it, Civilization 1 through 600, however many there are. But like it's like what comes after. So if you play a Civilization game, you stop back in the day, you get to current day, and then one of the ways you can win is lift off into space. Alpha Centauri is when that ship gets to the planet. But things, of course, like the plot of everything, things go wrong in transit, and then there's massive chaos, and the leader of the group dies, or is he assassinated? And so you do a 4X game, and it's a lot of fun if you like turn-based not micromanaging, but like it's a good amount of management in there. You control all your troops and build them and control your society. The
Yeah,
drill.
that sounds fun.
Yeah. So it's ancient, but like I said, it's open to my son, but we'd like to get it out. Cool. So
cool.
after all that, Ready Set Data, where we talk about different things involving technology, we tend to end up in the data side of things just because of our own biases. But today, I think we're talking about something that's pretty much general across the board, outages and emergencies. We're to share some stories, maybe talk about things that could have prevented the problem that we dealt with. But before that, I think I don't have the usual planetary announcement. I think Lee has an announcement today, so I'll let him lead.
Yeah.
Are you in space too?
Lead.
Yeah. So, yes, yes, agree. Lead.
Glad someone picked it up. It's fine.
So, a few weeks ago, I was notified about something that has been kind of the culmination of actually years of hard work on my own front, and the contributions of people within the SQL Server community. And I was accepted to present at the Past Data Community Summit.
Nice.
Yay!
Very cool.
So yeah, I'm super excited. This will be the third year that I've attended PASS
Mm-hmm.
in the community summit. So yeah, I mean, I submitted kind of on a whim, just because some folks at work and my wife encouraged me to do it. They were like, just submit. You never know. I was like, come on,
Is that
I'm
in
no one. They're not going
Seattle?
to accept mine. Yes. So it is an in-person and an online conference, and the speaking submissions you had to pick one or the other, which I have mixed feelings about, but I'm sure they had a reason for doing it that way. So
Mm-hmm.
I submitted for an online conference session. So I'll be attending from home and online giving my presentation. I don't think I'm giving it live. I think I actually record it ahead of time. Then we play it, and then we do Q&A after, I think. But I need to ask all of that and find out. But it's really cool. I was super excited, and I am really, I don't know. It's kind of surreal. Like it's a major life goal to get
Yeah.
this, and
Oh, it's awesome. Yeah.
yeah, I'm pretty. Sometimes it doesn't feel real.
So you go,
Cool.
Grady, you don't realize it, but he's kind of a big deal now.
Oh yeah, I've known that. That's why I wanted to jump on board with the Ready Set Data. I'm like, yeah, I'll ride your coattails. But the but
So
the
very excited about it.
with that past community summit, do we want to we can put a link in Discord for anybody that would like to attend virtually. I'm sure they're still doing registrations.
Nice.
Looks like it's November 15th to 18th. Seattle and online is what it says. So
Yeah, and
I'll drop that in the Discord right now.
Thanks. That's the main conference. There are pre-conference sessions on Monday and Tuesday, and I think pre-conference sessions, the pricing was all there, but all together, like if you did 2 pre-cons plus the conference, I think it's like $600 or $700. I don't remember. I mean, it's not cheap, but it's way cheaper than actually going to the conference. and it's a great opportunity to meet people in the data space. I mean, there's stuff there for any of the three of us.
Yeah.
Anybody who does anything with SQL Server is perfectly welcome. It will fit right in, and you'll learn a ton. You'll get connected to other people who do the same kind of work that you do, and they can be a resource to you for all kinds of things. And people in the SQL Server community, they don't. It's not just about being a data professional. I mean, they're interested in you as a person. They want to know who you are, and yeah. So anyway, that's my spiel about the summit and getting to speak at the summit. So
Congratulations. That's
Are
awesome.
you a remote host or are you flying out there?
so I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to do it from home. So I'll do the online conference from the house here, attend sessions, do my speaker session from the house. I'd like to and intend to contact them to see if there's a way for me to still attend and then do my online session, but I don't know how that will work. And I mean, it's like 10 times more expensive to do it that way. It's literally the difference of like $2,500
Yeah.
to attend in person versus just the 3-day conference online. So we'll see.
Yeah. No, that is congratulations and looking
Thank you.
forward to it. I'll sign up. I'll go to it. I'm not paying for it, so I don't care. But let's all be fair. If you work in IT, you get to go to mostly free conferences whenever you want. So,
Well, hopefully, yeah.
well, if you work towards being in, I've worked toward being in a place in IT where I can always go to free conferences. I'll say that.
Yeah, 100%.
Right.
I've always
Okay,
pushed
speaking.
a deep when they ask when anybody always asks about like what brings job satisfaction to you, like I've always pushed for education, so I've always been able to justify saying, I came in with this pre-notion in mind saying that I value education, so it leaves people more apt to pay for stuff like
Yeah.
this. So keep that in mind if anybody's ever out there in chat world that is looking to get to conferences like this and see Lee speak,
If
then
you're
we
lucky.
if you're lucky, then yeah, make sure you bring that kind of stuff up. We talked about peer review or performance reviews and stuff like that. Bring that kind of stuff up. That would make you a happier employee. It would make you further your career, stuff like that. So, little side note there.
Awesome. So one of the catches of working in IT, now that we've talked about one of the benefits, one of the catches is sometimes what we build or what we maintain breaks down. Sometimes it happens while you're at work. Sometimes it happens during the most important week of your company's fiscal year. Sometimes it happens at 2 o'clock in the morning, right after New Year's. That wasn't fun. So
Usually.
So
I don't know
3
about.
times this year it happened at New Year's. I mean, how does that even happen?
Yeah, I can tell you because I was there last New Year's, but yeah, might have been my fault. I don't know.
So
No, the it does seem to be always around holidays or sometime that we're not just readily
I think it's because
available.
we remember those. I think it's because we remember those.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
It's probably
So,
always, and we
yeah.
just remember the ones we have to come in for.
Nonetheless, it happens. That's why there's people on call or there's emergency lines, programs like Apple of Apple, PagerDuty.
Programs like Apple.
Where did that even come from?
No.
PagerDuty. So I don't know, either you have a good story to kick off conversation. I see a lot of faces O'Grady's making.
You look like you have one, O'Grady.
Oh, I got a lot, but
Let's do it. We can take turns, or if you got a bunch you want a monologue, do it. I don't care. Let's get some of these out there. Let's scare some people.
let me take away all the names and company names and all that first in my head.
Get rid of the names to protect the guilty. I mean,
Yes.
innocent.
No. Yes. So yeah, I mean, you guys remember that I've created a task force for emergency situations to help prevent emergency situations
That's right.
called the QRT, which was the Quick React team. Um, it was a subset of what I did in the military. We had teams on standby that when something went needed to be done, the team that was on Quick React would go out and get that done, while other people are resting, and there's always someone on duty. So, taking that into the IT workplace, I did create that group, and all it was I think I ended up doing one person from each IT type role. So we had like infrastructure there, one person from each team, development teams. Lee, I believe you were there, or you sent someone every time,
Mm-hmm.
and so
Probably,
there's a
probably Anthony.
representation. Yeah, I think Anthony
Yeah.
was the one you sent.
Was it? Yeah.
So there's always a representation
Doesn't mean
of everybody, and essentially the meeting was to help prevent these major outages, these things that can affect end users is what I consider major outage, from a development standpoint. Obviously, there's big outages for data that they may never see, but for me, big outages was as our customer affected. That being said, all we did in the meetings was we went. I think it was once a week, and we just said, "Hey, what are you guys all doing? Is it affecting anybody else?" And a lot of times it was like no, or they'd be like, "Oh, I'm updating this table in this database with this new call I'm doing," and I'm like, "Oh, you know what? That's going to hit something that's I'm working on or someone else working on." So we all just discussed it, and then if we had any major things that may conflict with each other or may cause an outage or um, moving servers, stuff like that, it would be brought up. Then each person would bring it back to their team or whatever department they are and say, "Hey, here's what happened. They're moving servers this weekend. No one sent out an email." Just an example, but here's what's happening, and I found it very useful. I don't believe it exists anymore, but
no.
it exists at my
I have a
company.
scenario. I have a scenario that happened very recently that I feel is related. The Quick React team would have helped with the situation. So basically, the one of the things I liked about the team that you're talking about was the fact that we would sit down, we'd be in the room for 15, 20 minutes, and then everyone take a turn and talk about something big that they're about to do in the next. I can't remember if it was a week or 2 weeks.
I think it was. I don't remember if it was a week or 2 weeks, but it was something that it was a regular interval. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, hey, here's some big stuff that's happening, and what I liked about that was less about the occasional you find a good, oh hey, you should do that because this. So that is conversation, although that happened. The big thing for me is like once you have a sufficiently large team, and when I say team, I mean like the whole group. There's things people do that you don't see, you don't recognize, right? There's different teams all over the department. So especially some places have IT departments that span more than one department, mine included. We have two IT areas basically, and there was a recent problem that someone was trying to solve, and they didn't understand what could have changed. Everyone believed nothing changed, and it turns out, because of a conversation I had elsewhere, I happen to be in this conversation with people scratching their heads and go, "Oh yeah, so and so made a change." I have to be vague, but so and so made a change, and a thing that didn't exist before now exists. We always were going to have four of them, but now we have five of them, and that just changed the way things happen. And we're never going to have more than whatever one of those things. Well, now we do, and so things that made assumptions broke.
Assumptions are so great.
Yeah. So, but I just happened to be in that conversation, and I was like, "Yeah, you need to talk to so and so because they did this." And if it wasn't that situation, who knows when they would have realized something that was assumed to be true for many a year, so long true. And the correct team could have handled that. If that person was like, "Here's a big thing I'm doing next week," then everybody would have known.
And that's the secondary part of the Quick React team, like you brought up, is that you're also the
Huh.
one that if something goes wrong, that team jumps on it. So outages happen. Well, you now have one person from each team to do an all hands type deal, or at least a partial hands type deal,
Yeah,
and correct that outage as quick as possible. And it
to
was a
get the right
drop everything
people.
situation. Yeah.
Yeah, get the right people into the war room to figure it out.
Yeah.
Because one of the problems we were fixing at back at that time was we actually did do the all hands when it was an outage, and what would happen
Yep.
is almost it would always be like 3, 4, maybe 5 people. There's always these certain people who were like actively doing the thing, and then everyone else in the department was kind of, I'm here for you. Let me know if you need anything.
Yeah.
And it was nice to have like a core team that covered all the aspects. And that core team, yeah, maybe not all of them would be, maybe 1 or 2 would cross arms, but the people who weren't on that core team could continue to do their job. And
Mhm.
so if we had outage that lasted all day and we had 6 people working on it, the other 20 people could the football, so to speak.
Yep.
Sports ball reference.
Sports ball. No, yeah, that's 100%. It would have been most likely either prevented or worked on and corrected as worked on and completed earlier and more timely than than maybe it was. So,
Yeah,
Lee,
do
how
you
about you? You
remember
got
anything? Oh,
what?
I was going to ask if you remember anything major coming that QRT prevented, or is that too far back?
It was a little while back, but
Okay,
yeah,
fair
I
enough.
don't. I know there were some.
Probably because it was prevented and it was an emergency, so you didn't get hurt. So
Yeah, I know a lot of it. A lot of times it was the AS400 stuff that we didn't even know what they were doing, and that's when we found out what they were doing. We're like, oh, you're changing stuff that we use. Thank you. I now know this. There are certain things that not every developer was privy to
yeah,
that
you have no
some of
idea.
us didn't know. Yeah. So it's definitely useful. But Lee, I know you have 100,000. So because you're a data guy, that's like where the problems happen when they happen, or the big problems I feel like happen when
That's where
they're,
the problems end up. They may be
or
sent there
maybe
by
that's yeah.
other.
They drop onto my desk or my
Yes.
Teams or my whatever.
I'll say that's where they show themselves more is on your side. Yeah.
Yeah, so I have a couple of stories. One one you would be familiar with, and one you would not.
Okay.
So, I've had a situation where, well, first of all, almost all of these situations, not a lot of them start with, oh, things are slow, or
Why? Why
the
would people
the,
say that?
the customer said their app is slow or whatever. I'm like,
Oh, I'm
okay,
sorry. I thought you meant like problems around the IT world. As in,
oh,
never in IT say it's a slow day.
right.
That's what I
Yeah,
thought you
don't
said. I'm
ever say
sorry.
that either,
That
because
will
that just
start these problems. That's for some
that'll
reason.
start it.
Yeah. That's where I
No,
thought you
what
were
I mean
going.
is, yeah, no, the a customer, like I'll get contacted by somebody in the company and say, customer X says that their app is slow, their stuff isn't showing up in the application right now, and they know it should be there or whatever.
Okay.
And I mean, that's the number one thing that happens. It's slow. Okay. What is slow? Like, what part of the app? What data is it there? Oh, by the way, what SQL server are we even talking about? Because, we have a lot, and I don't know
Mm-hmm.
which SQL server this customer is on. So there's always that initial 5 to 10 minutes of just like info gathering that has to happen before you can really do anything at all. And then in this particular scenario, I start digging in, and I find that there are some queries that are blocking each other. So, as queries come in, they do some work, but if they don't finish quickly enough, then other queries pile in behind them, and then that causes applications to slow down because things don't finish. So this is kind of a situation I had. And the more we dug into it, the more interesting it became because the blocking was only one part of it. And at one point, as I'm continuing to run queries to try to figure out more about the blocking, and I'm looking at monitoring software like SQL Sentry, formerly known as Sentry One, my queries stop finishing. Like I'm running diagnostic queries and they just run and run and run and they don't ever show any results.
I'm now familiar with it.
So now I'm thinking that there is a memory issue because in SQL Server, when this kind of thing happens, databases tend to, or the SQL Server may not have enough memory to give to queries so that they can start running. And so you hit F5 or execute in SQL Server Management Studio, and you can see the little spinny thing and SSMS is running, but you're not getting any results back. So I was thinking about that. And some of those diagnostic queries, they're lightweight, but they do a lot of work, even though they're lightweight. So I thought, well, let me just try something else. There's another diagnostic query that just gets information from one table and it tells me what's waiting inside SQL Server. So I look at that and I look at all of the wait info and I come across a deadly wait that you never want to see on your SQL Server, which is called thread pool wait. And it's related to CPU threads. And the thread pool wait says this session or task, in this case, it's not a session, it was a task because I'm querying waiting tasks for SQL Server. These tasks can't get a CPU thread, so they can't start. But I'm looking at CPU and it's not pegged. There's nothing else in the dashboard from SQL Sentry that tells me or gives me any inkling as to what the issue is, other than the blocking I'd already identified. We keep digging. I eventually start killing some queries. We ponder restarting the SQL Server, but decide to not do that because that's a sledgehammer approach.
Yeah.
Eventually, after we killed enough queries, things started improving and queries would actually run and finish, show results, and the application was more responsive. And then, yeah, there were a few other things that indicated there was some maybe some latency for the data, some of the database files that were involved on this particular server. So it's like a combination of several different things that all came together to create kind of the perfect storm for this particular scenario. And you know, we don't really necessarily I don't think we really found a root cause. We just found a bunch of symptoms that kind of came together to create this scenario. And sometimes that's the best you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's great to find the root cause, but like you said, you kind of call it perfect storm. There's this meta thing that kind of happens with these kind of situations where, it's not like this app isn't working because it's a misconfiguring in a config file. It's a problem that happened 2 days ago. I don't know, but maybe hours ago, something was blocking. And then there's what I like to call a log jam, where you have all the different things backed up. That first one, let's say it goes away. Now it's gone, but everything else has to fall off the queue. And all of them are taking threads, all of them are taking up CPU, and they're all waiting their turn. And even though SQL Server or any database, any relational database may choose, is fast, when it's that many different things and they aren't performance tuned, let's be honest, they will have to take their time to finish.
Yeah.
Another thing that tends to happen in these scenarios that kind of has to go with the meta of the emergency is users tend to have a instinct to make outages worse.
Oh yeah.
I also
F5, 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 F5.
100%. Yes. Like, oh, this is where it's not working. well, I just refresh it. It's kind of like you said, oh yeah, if we turn it off, turn it back on, it might make it better. Well, if you have 100,000 users and they're all like, oh, this is weird, F5. Now everything that's in that logjam has been duplicated. Let's do it again, and that's been duplicated. And if there's
Yeah.
anything in there that is doing something more than once per call, which I see constantly, that's spider webbing too. And if there's not, it's like a funnel, right? If you have a funnel, it slows down the flow of water, and all day long you can have that water with the funnel, and it's just fine. And then you just get that water up a little bit too far, suddenly the funnel doesn't keep up and overflows, right?
Yep.
And even if you turn off the water, it all has to work its way through. And we don't turn off the water; we have the user still working, right?
Yeah.
That's not always true. I've used that trick before. I've definitely done scandalous things to make it so like, oh, no one else is using this for now. There's already an outage, right?
Oh yeah,
Right,
I've
right.
definitely dropped all users from Tomcat servers and
Bounce Tomcat
restarted the
server.
Tomcat servers. Yeah, that's a very unfortunately normal thing to do during an outage due to some infrastructure setup and the difficulties that we would have had otherwise. The quickest option was a lot of times to restart the Tomcat for that same reason. We can fix a problem, but then 10 on top of it may normally not be a problem, but now huge
because
problem.
it's a jam.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I've definitely there was a particular time where it was a particular stored procedure. Did change, and testing at the time involved running it once. Oh, the data's right. Cool, move on. And then it's a very important app, gets called, and then it gets called lots of times. There's a bottleneck, and now it's causing a problem. And every time we try to kill a couple, because people are fiving it, because it keeps happening, we couldn't get to stop, right? So I ended up renaming the proc. That person, whatever. I renamed the proc. So now all of our infrastructure starts working except for that one web page that uses that one proc.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was a good trade-off. And now we can,
Mhm.
then all of a sudden everything kind of started speeding up, everything started going. And it gave us time to figure out what was going on when when at the time we didn't have the tooling to say, let's just turn off this web page. It would be at the time, no one was able to say, okay, we're going to turn off this one Java package. We're not going to turn off this one particular server, right? So that took care of that. And I actually learned that trick from working the first job at a pizza joint. Sometimes things get really backed up, and if it was really bad, the manager would say, "No more calls," or they say, "Quote an hour and a half," so people won't take orders because we need the jam to go through. The oven will only take so much flow, and sometimes that's what you need to do. Sometimes you just need to stop the bad stuff from coming in so it can flow out when you have these states, because we never see them when they first happen. Right.
And like Dunt said there, everybody at company, is anyone else's email slow? Not only is the email at that point being, blocked up more because he's sending it to everyone. A lot of times that also leads to people doing speed tests on their internet, thinking their internet's slow. Well, then now you have every user in the company doing a damn speed test. Might as well be a DDoS. Like it's
right.
It destroys it. I've ran into
social
that.
DDoSing.
Not a fan. But so definitely users like to make their troubles worse a lot of times. But that's what we are employed for. It's job security, I guess.
Yeah. Yep. I had another scenario where I hadn't had a vacation day in a long time. And I'm on vacation. It's approaching noon. And I get a call from my boss who has like 3 or 4 other people on the phone. And he says, "Hey, most of the apps in the company don't work right now." And I said, "Well, that's a problem, and very interesting one." And I thought, there's a third-party company that we have that you could have called, so you wouldn't bother me on my vacation day. I didn't say that, of course, but I wanted to.
Yeah.
So I signed in and used a program called SolarWinds Database Performance Analyzer, which I still love to this day. And in
Yeah, me
just
too.
a minute or two, found the issue. Someone had opened a query, didn't close it up, commit the transaction, didn't commit what they were doing. I either killed the query or committed it for them or something. And then everybody said everything's good, and I said okay, bye. And so that was a fun one.
That's
Um,
exactly how I remembered ending. We can say that.
so
It may
um,
or may not been I guess indirectly my fault because it was my
eh,
liege.
nah, that was the result of a battle that I kind of lost and didn't push on. It's all good. But I bring that's a story I thought about.
Hmm. Oh yeah.
You talked about how they never happen, or they seem to never happen at times that are convenient. And so that's also kind of what made me think about that is, I was really looking forward to an uninterrupted vacation day, and didn't get it. And that's sometimes the reality of
IT, yeah.
IT. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Especially if you're the only person that does what you do. So
Or yeah, or you get further along in your career and you're a team lead or something like
yeah,
that where it's like, well, that's what you're signing up for by moving further into IT is more, or I guess less off time, you know. A lot of times
yeah,
you're just,
certainly can be.
yeah, you're just on call. Like even when you're not on call, you kind of are because you're the one that's going to feel the pain if you don't fix it. So
Yeah,
it's
I
like,
mean, if your first level people can't fix it, then they're going to escalate to you, and
yeah,
that's what they should do,
yep, yep.
And
Yeah.
um, yeah,
Yeah, I was actually gonna bring up the same story, but
oh yeah,
yeah, that was a yeah, that was an interesting time for me as a manager of sorts, and my team doing
Well, yeah.
things incorrectly.
Yeah, Lee kind of sidestepped it, but I'm gonna bring it up. There's we lost Brady. Hopefully he's still there. He does this video. I still
the
see Lee
stream is
moving.
still going, so
Yeah. All right, I'll just keep rolling. We'll see what happens. Um, so yeah, you kind of sidestepped it, Lee, but sometimes companies hire new people, and sometimes they're junior. Sometimes they're very junior. Um,
yeah,
there's a question of when do you give them the keys, right? You have to give them something. So we call the QRF. Yeah, QRT. Um, so QRT, we got an outage live on the stream. Can't play
yeah,
out like this. So, but yeah, when do you give them the keys? When do you say you have the ability to do your job? And that's not an easy question to answer. It has a little bit to do with culture, a little bit to do with a bunch of different things. And
yeah,
I don't
for
know. I
sure.
know you sidestepped it because you don't want to burn somebody, but I feel like it's not a burn. It's every company's different. There's companies that like the senior people don't even have the keys that, for example, I know I have, and Lee, I assume you have, like because they
Right.
in an emergency, either somebody is Batman and they have the keys, or when the emergency happens, there's somebody able to flip a switch and give somebody the ability to do crazy things.
Yeah, I've actually been through that a couple of different times in a couple of different jobs. For me specifically, where I'll show up at the job, I'm the DBA, and I realize I can't connect to something that's like a core system or core database instance, or I can't do what I need. I can tell when I connect and I don't get all the objects down SQL Server Management Studio that I'm expecting. I can tell right then that I don't have the permissions that I want.
Yeah,
Um, and And so I guess, you know, I understand to a certain degree that companies don't just give you the keys to the kingdom up front a lot of times, especially, depending on, how junior you are in your career, how things are going, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And but at some point, I guess you cross a certain threshold, a certain number of years of experience and that sort of thing, where you do get the keys to the kingdom on day one, and you respect that, and you don't abuse it, you're careful with it, that sort of thing. Um, yeah, I mean, in those cases, I just go back to my boss and I say, "Look, you're asking me to do X, but I can't even do B, let alone get down to letter X. You're gonna have to give me some more permissions here."
Right. And we heard you for a second there, Brady. Oh,
There you
let's
are.
come back.
We
And
don't hear
yay.
you. We
Oh
see you,
no.
but we don't hear you. Okay.
All right. So anyway, yeah, that's tough, and it depends on culture and a lot of things.
Yep.
When you have a small group, a lot of times, you add your second or third person to a team, you gotta get value very quick. Um,
Yeah. We
so
have someone starting um on July 11th at my
congrats.
current job, and I'm excited that we're going to get that second person back. But it's the same thing. I mean, you've recently talked to someone, you've interviewed them, you asked them some questions to see if they meet your criteria,
How about now?
but you don't.
Oh, there you are.
There you are.
Hey, I'm back. That was fun.
But you
I disconnected. Stupid.
but you
Continue.
don't really know that person yet. You don't really. There's no. I mean, maybe there's implicit or explicit trust, not implicit, but external trust, where you just like you have the role, so we're just going to give you the accompanying permissions, um, and we trust that you're not going to mess anything up. And if you do, then we'll have a combo about that. But
Yeah, so I unplugged my one of my docking ports, which controlled my camera and my microphone.
whoops.
Uh,
Yeah,
See, we had a live outage. Like you can't even plan this stuff.
you know.
Yeah,
Perfect. And you see his grace in the fire there, where he was like trying to get things working, and we just had to keep rolling. Talk
that's
about
right.
when he couldn't listen, when he wasn't listening.
Yeah, I could hear you
Yeah.
guys the whole time, but
Oh,
my
that's
headphones are plugged into my
that's
computer
that's
directly.
embarrassing.
It's a it's a whole. I'm not looking forward to moving this into my new office once that is a thing. But
But I bet you're looking forward to being in the new office.
you know, one of these days.
Oh
That, that
no.
yeah, I have to have a ceiling now, so I'm still waiting for my contractor to find people that want to work because he can't find anybody to work. So
Oh,
we
okay.
have the material sitting there, just can't find anybody to put it in.
That's toast.
Once that's done, I will be down in my downstairs office for good. One day. So does anybody else have any good stories or I guess even
I
ways
think.
that prevented a good story from being a good story?
Oh, we can talk about some prevention. For one, monitoring if you can find root causes. So basically, after an emergency, do a postmortem, figure out what went wrong,
Yep.
and try your best to spend time doing a root cause analysis, even if you don't have time. Like you didn't have time for the outage, right? You
Well, yeah.
didn't, but it happened, and it'll happen again. So if you do a root cause analysis, you can maybe find some steps you can take to prevent it. And that's one of my favorite things to do to prevent outages is figure out what caused the first one as best you can.
Oh yeah.
Um, in my career, there's been a lot, and Lee just brought it up in his career in the SQL and SQL lands. database administrator land is much, much longer than mine. And he's mentioned this. There's a lot of times where you end up saying, we don't know what the root cause is. We're not sure. We have like 7 ideas, but we can't say for sure it's any of them. And, as time goes on, you get better, you see more patterns, or you have somebody else on the call who knows something, and then that gets you to where you need to go. And those are very, very important. Yeah, those are very important to preventing them later. Which leads me to number 2, which is set up monitoring to track the things that can be gotchas, right? Suddenly CPU spiking, suddenly you get a lot of timeouts. If this is very database heavy, so I tend to roll that way. If the database is starting to spit out timeouts, then you want to know so you can act on it. Oh yes, Mr. Markham.
Unless it's been changed, the database for SQL Server at least will let you run your query forever. So SQL will not be the cause of your timeout.
Yes.
In most cases.
Most cases.
Timeouts happen because an application gives up.
Yeah. 30-second timeout for web apps.
I personally like to keep it at 30 seconds. I've been in so many conversations where they're like, "Oh, we should make it a minute. We should make it 3 minutes." And
if it's browser based, just tell them to go over 30 seconds.
That's a problem. Like, just let it. You want it to time out, and B, you want someone to know about it so you can fix the real problem, which is whatever the performance issue is. And there's 7 different ways to take care of that. Sounds like a blog post. 7 ways to fix your timeouts. But yeah, that should be what's addressed, because the moment you say, okay, we're going to make this one take a minute, then you get this Anthony guy starting and he gets a ticket. This is a true story. And it's like, oh, it's taking a minute now. I say more than a minute. How long is it taking? I think 3 minutes will be fine. And now you said 10 for 3 minutes. Like, when are you going to draw the line? Like, make it faster, better, stronger.
That's
Daft
right.
Punk should be kicking it right now.
Especially when those queries can, it might have been 30 seconds when it was created based on the data that it was pulling. But as more data gets entered, more tables get joined into whatever you're doing, those calls get larger and larger. You might have only had 200 records to begin with, so it wasn't that bad of a call. But then over time, now you're pulling 2 million records, and it's like, why is this going slower? It's like, well, yeah, now you need some performance tuning.
And you probably haven't looked at your indexes since you made it either.
That's true. So that seems natural, though. So that's a natural cause, which you should still address. But there's some other causes that aren't natural that you could probably fix. Lee already mentioned one. Maybe your indexing strategy needs to change. But another one is maybe someone made a change, right? They did something. They added something to the table or tables in your query. And then they moved something. Net latency is making link server calls, which none of us have link server calls. No, we're better than that.
Never.
But yeah. That didn't happen to me today. So maybe the procedure that's being used was changed, or the SQL that's being used was changed, and it was fast enough at the time. But then it gets on prod under a little bit of pressure, it doesn't act so good. And if you just turn it up to a minute, turn it up to 3 minutes, turn it up to 20 minutes. Then what you end up doing is not realizing that if you spend time looking into it, you could bring it back down to a 15-second query, right? And to be completely honest, more and more, and Lee, if you disagree with this, I'd actually love to hear it. I'm not even tempting fate here. More and more, I just want everything to be less than a second, like period. Like on my operational machines, I want it to be less than a second. If it's not a second, talk to me. Like, what's going on? Why? This whole thing of like, I remember early on, it was like the limit was 15 seconds. I've heard some people say 3 seconds, and then I heard it break down in different ways. No, if we're not talking milliseconds, we need to be talking about something else.
We are.
Right?
30,000 milliseconds.
Nice.
Spoken like a developer.
Yeah,
that's how we do it.
1 second is a great goal. That depends on a whole list of things. I think, do you have experienced SQL developers?
Mm-hmm.
100%.
I didn't ask, do you have experienced developers? I said, do you have experienced SQL developers?
Amen.
Because what O'Grady does as a software engineer, if we take away the SQL part, O'Grady does SQL, but let's say he doesn't do SQL. Let's just pretend for a second.
Pretending.
Software engineers do fabulous things, and I admire them. You guys can do you folks, guys, women, whatever, can do fabulous things, and that I can't do, and I don't want to try to learn. But that world is different from a relational database world.
Yeah.
And so then, and I'm going to bring up something that's going to hit a hot button. So
Yes.
then, and you already know
And
what
that's
it is.
why
You
I
have to
hate
know.
devs. Whoa.
You have to know, Anthony, where I'm about to take this. So then that's where you get ORMs like Entity Framework and other things that help software engineers build queries without having to know anything about the database, which sounds super fantastic. But my experience has been that those tools do not build very good queries. I'm saying it nicely because we're recorded.
So he
shit.
says mean things normally. You hear that, internet? Mean things.
I don't fault software engineers for that, because software engineers have to know so many different languages and so many different things. So I get it, but SQL is not the same as software engineering with C# or whatever. It's a different thing. And so that's why I said you need good SQL developers who understand a relational database engine, whether that's MySQL or SQL Server or whatever, PostgreSQL. Those things operate differently than making a call through an API to do something with. See, I don't even know. It works differently.
With data that
to
you
flip it
get.
around, I've put a lot of love and energy into being good with T-SQL and performance tuning. It's unfair of me to expect O'Grady to do all the tricks that I do. He does a lot of them, and I love that about him, but that's just unfair. And that can be flipped. I can't Angular JS my way out of a web paper bag, right? In fact, the last time I touched Angular was, I think, before that thing where it skipped a number and became a different language. I don't know. That's the limit of my expertise.
That's Angular. There's Angular JS, which does exist in your current company.
Yes.
I did my best on getting rid of a lot of it when I was there, but then it went to, from Angular JS, it was recreated to Angular 2, and then now that's what we're currently based on. But there is no relation between Angular JS and Angular 2. They literally started over.
They completely refactored it.
Interesting.
They made it better, but it's completely different.
So there's a certain a certain dev at where we all used to work that was very good at Angular. So I would always go up to him and ask him Angular JS questions just to mess with him.
Not that Angular. I know. He's still there, a very senior front end dev, really talented, and
he's like, stop talking to me. I don't know Angular JS.
Cutting edge, and
that's
walk up
so
to
mean,
an ancient Angular one. He's like, no, it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know you know Angular JS. How do you do this? He's like, I don't know Angular. This is always obviously I like messing with people.
But, even beyond having a good SQL developer, you have to have someone who's paying attention to things like the rate of change of the data. Now, you mentioned, O'Grady, it worked fine when it had 200 records, and now it has 2 million records.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a completely different situation. and people will say, well, if it can scale, then it should be able to handle that. Well, that would be like me saying, giving you the cliff notes for a Shakespeare novel, a Shakespeare play,
Scale it up to the real play.
and then you read it in 5 minutes, and then I give you the real play, and I say, okay, you have 5 minutes to read it. You'd be like, what the heck, dude? Of
Yeah.
course I can't read this in 5 minutes. And be like, well, why not? It's obvious why not. It's more work. And
Yeah,
you can
that's very
scale.
unfair. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, you can scale. You just have to know how to do it with relational systems,
Oh yeah.
And you
which
decided
involves,
not to do it, and now you're upset.
yeah, you kick the can down the road, and
Hmm.
now you want to say, oh, it doesn't scale. No, it scales. There's just some extra stuff you have to do and pay
Yeah.
attention to. Like, are your statistics updated? Do you have an index or any indexes that matter for this query?
Are you doing a
No and
string
no. Well, then
comparator
it's
on
not.
every row?
Yeah,
You know.
Are you
yeah,
clustering by GUID? Yeah.
yeah. Are you, calling a function 6 times in a where clause in this query?
Hmm.
Dear
There's
Lord.
just stuff you have to think about, and so yeah,
Yeah, definitely. Definitely
Dapper.
been there on that. And also,
I love Dapper, by the way. When you talk about
Dapper.
OMs, I always want to, you know how the thing when someone says something, they always like, well, but what about? That's what I want to do with Dapper every time I have this conversation because I feel like Dapper has been very successful in our environment. Like, very rarely are we having a problem because of that particular, can I call it ORM? That
hmm
particular library or whatever. Like, it's been great. Every once in a while, there's like it defaults to varchar. So if you're talking, there's some of that, but that's nothing like what you see in any framework where like the queries are doing subqueries of subqueries of subqueries. The
Oh
end just
yeah,
one
it's
problem.
awful.
Yeah,
And when
you
you
just
use Entity Framework, you saying Invachar Max made me think of this. When you use an ORM, I you yeah, I got to pay attention to what is it actually going to build for me.
Yep.
There are things that you need to do to it. I I had to deal with
that's
a database that was built by an ORM, and the person didn't set any kind of data types, and almost
varchar
Yeah.
max the
every
walls.
table was
Yeah.
full of Invarchar Max, and they wanted me to make it go faster. And I'm like, that'd be a no,
No, no,
because
no,
Yeah.
no. Lee, you don't understand. Just throw an index on it, right?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
sure, as long as they're
I
all in the
love it when like
include.
I love it when people lead
Yeah.
with that, right? They're like, it's like, hey, something's wrong. And I'm like, well, I'm working on the problem, but this is going to be hard. Waste of time. Have you tried looking at indexes yet? You walked up to the DBA and that's like, do you know what an index is? Like, if it was that easy, we would have led with that.
It's
Yeah.
like
Sorry.
a mutual
Yeah.
fund or something, right?
Yeah.
Oh
S&P
yeah.
500.
Yeah.
And I explained over and over to them the many ways that Invarchar Max, hurts your database system. And I think some of them got it, but um, to fix it, we needed to redesign the tables. And they had just done that like the year or two before I got hired at this place. So they weren't willing to do that. And I've never done this before. My boss kept pushing me to make it go faster. And I kept explaining why that wasn't possible. And so one day he did it to me again. And I went to his office and I sat down and I said, you need to stop asking me to make it go faster because you're not listening to what I've already told you and the team a bajillion times. I've done
Yeah.
all I can do with the
Yep.
scenario that you've given me. Sorry, I'm
And
all
that's
out of
what
tricks.
we had that talk on that on one of our shows about making times to or the right times to say no. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
sometimes it's like if I
Yeah.
can't do it or what you're asking is even if I can do it, but it's going to take me a ridiculous amount of time, or it's more of a company project that needs to get approved. Redesigning tables isn't like, oh, let's just do that today. It's like, no, this
Yeah,
is
that's
going to
not a
be.
today thing.
Yeah. So
If
yeah,
we're
those are
talking about,
times it's like, no,
yeah,
we're not doing that. Or we need to get a lot more approval than you telling me that this thing is running slow for me to redesign
Yeah.
all this stuff. Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, I mean, preventing outages and emergencies, you need good SQL developers, and you need someone, whether that's the developer or an admin or an engineer, you need someone paying enough attention to the relational system to maintain things like the statistics and the indexes and actually look at it over time. Because just because you smooth everything out today on July 7th doesn't mean that 3 months from now in October, everything's still going to be fine, or a year from now. Because guess what? Your data changed between today and October. You've loaded 5 million more records or 500 million more records.
Yeah.
So now the data looks differently. So now you have to do different things with it. Your queries look different because guess what? Your company loves reports. And when you write more reports, you're asking the database to do different things in October than you did in July. So now you need to examine it all again. So,
Yeah.
I was gonna say from a programming standpoint, from my all my dev nerds, there's a bunch of ways that we programmatically build health checks and things to help one prevent outages, but two let us know when there is one.
yeah.
Ideally, yeah, let's prevent them. If we can not have them happen, that would be the best. That's obviously. We know we don't live in a perfect world. We're gonna have outages. We don't write perfect code. We were joking earlier, just don't write a bug. Like, that's how you fix it. It's like, no, don't. But we all write bugs. That's how it goes.
Yeah.
But we put our safety nets in place. We have health checks. We have dashboards that show when something goes down right away. Emails that go out. We have, the person on call gets a text message or a phone call, automatically, not, or I guess programmatically, not based on someone else finding it and then calling them.
Right.
Anything you can automate from a developer standpoint, I'm sure for you guys too. Oh
yeah, I love automation.
Yeah, automation's where it's at. If you can let your system tell you when there's a problem, I feel like that's the best step in the right direction. Like, obviously, the perfect direction is don't have the problem, but logs. I'm sure. Oh, with SQL, it has logging built in now, right?
What's that mean? I mean, there's.
Yeah. What do you mean?
There's change logs built in now, right? Like if you change a database, you can tell that it was changed.
There is a feature called SQL Server Audit. That's actually been around for a long time, since 2008 or 2008 R2, and it's grown over time. But it is something you have to turn on and configure. It's not on by default.
So you guys, find it at I've created something that uses that, in the environment we all used to be in. So that was not a minor undertaking.
Yeah, that's where I always come from, the fact that like I've used a lot of stuff that's been created that I'm like, I don't know if that's SQL or if that's something that a developer in SQL created that I use. I'm like, I don't know. But
yeah.
But either way, you guys have logging, or you have the option to put in logging of some sorts, and we either do the same thing on our side. We get an error. It could be something as simple as they click something and the call didn't go through. Well, you might get a database error saying it didn't fail to write to the database, or if it was actually an error on your side. A lot of times it's not. It's usually on our side saying, the API call didn't go through or whatever. We can log that stuff, and based on certain log levels, we can have a debug log level all the way up to, what does it go through? Information, errors. There's all kinds of different types of logs. And we can set it that if an error pops up that's critical, send everybody on the team an email. It's like, okay, cool. Now we know that error is happening. Obviously, very rudimentary. That's not a word.
Basic.
Basic. Nickname in high school. Um,
Dunce, I want to argue. I like what you said. So Dunce says if you don't log it, then it's never your problem, and you can always blame another team, specific company in mind. That's good. I would argue if you log it, then you can prove it's someone else's fault.
that's where I'm always.
Oh
That's
yes.
my stance. Like, no, look, see,
Mhm.
they did this. Because if I logged it and it is my problem, I'm going to fix that quietly ahead of time, and it's not a problem, right? So,
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah,
Love it.
I log for my benefit. 100%. It's like I always say, I
yeah,
lock
no,
my front door to protect the people that want to break in. But
that's a whole different story. Good night, everybody. Mwah. No, yep. Yeah, we do logging to protect the guilty. No,
what is that saying? It's I lock my door for your protection, not mine. Yeah,
yeah,
that's what it is.
Yeah, that's it.
We live in Missouri, guys.
Yeah.
It's just how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, SQL Server has tools to help you with outages and emergencies. You have a SQL Server error log. It doesn't obviously it only captures things that happen inside SQL Server. So
Mhm.
failed logins, that sort of thing. But if an application just fails to connect, SQL Server has no idea that happened. It
Yeah.
doesn't know because it never made a connection.
Mhm.
Um,
Exactly.
if
yeah,
you have a query that's running and it just stops, it times out. SQL Server doesn't it doesn't log that.
Yeah.
Now, there are ways to find it. Like with Query Store in SQL Server 2016, you can actually query the query store and find timeouts, but that still doesn't mean that something inside SQL did it. In fact, it usually doesn't mean that. But you also have things like the SQL Server audit that you can turn on, and it does kind of what you were talking about, O'Grady, where if you made a server level change, you changed max top to 400, or you made the max memory or the min memory for a query to be 40 gig or whatever. Um, it'll capture that sort of stuff. Where if you change things in the database, you change a setting, then it will record that and who did it and when, and then you can interrogate that. But and those help you with postmortems, like Anthony was talking about earlier. After the fact, you want to do a root cause analysis. Something like SQL Server Audit can help you with that. So yeah, I mean, and there's temporal tables, and in addition to temporal tables, an additional feature is Ledger. I don't really remember much about Ledger, but there's kind of an
all I
advanced.
gotta say is blockchain. It's just trying to get on the blockchain fad.
Okay.
That's my 2 cents.
SQL Server is always building in more auditing, more security things to try to figure out what happened, but you got to make that initial connection first. If the app doesn't do that, then we can't help you.
Yeah. How we doing on time, guys? You guys good?
I'm fine. We're at
You good?
8:20. How's everybody feeling?
I'm good. That's what I was asking.
Yeah, I'm good for a little bit longer. I feel like we're kind of winding down though to a good stopping
Okay.
point, unless somebody wants to bring up another thing that we want to rant about for a while.
I'll bring up one more and then maybe
Sure.
we'll stop then. Okay, cool.
That's fine.
So let's see here. I gotta pick one of the two that I was gonna talk about. Let's see here.
You can talk about both.
I guess I could talk about both. Okay, so not that long ago in a galaxy not that far away, there was a problem, and I guess I won't tell from point of view. I'll tell the stuff I didn't see, because otherwise I have to put way too much thought into this. But apparently, I'll skip to the chase. It was parameter sniffing problem. So at least one other person knows what I'm talking about. But so these queries were suddenly taking much longer, abnormal longer. We're not talking like twice as long than they should have, and it started causing timeouts. And so the Rube Goldberg machine that was built involves a third-party company. I'm not going to say their name. Reaching out to our web services. Said web service talks to a handful of other services that all make calls to the database. And this particular call was happening, and then it's timeout. And then so it stopped that query, which meant all the other queries had to stop or finish, but not be used, right? So it eventually get reported back to third party because the software is making the API call and it's getting no dice, right? So they'd call again, they'd call again, they'd call again. And so this process that would typically happen a couple hundred times an hour, which is, that's nothing in SQL Server land, right? Was suddenly happening rapid fire because we had a snowball effect, several different snowball effects, right? One was that the calls were happening and a percentage of them, I'll make a fake number, 10% of them would fail. So those 10% would happen again. Well, a percentage of those plus a percentage of the rest would fail. And this was happening for 2.5 hours before we knew there was a problem.
Ouch.
It was just slowly growing, and SQL Server was just handling it because hundreds an hour is not a problem. So it eventually became 200, blah, blah, blah. So hundreds per minute. And then it just kept going from there. But the more that was happening, this CPU intensive query, the more of it's happening, more of these bad ones, which got repeated, because the good ones were just finishing. It would keep happening, and then a CPU started to grow. It reached 100%, got pegged, and then all of a sudden everything was failing. The other snowball that was happening is, Grady, you could probably share a little about this if you guys do this. If a call fails, what should you do?
Retry it once.
Retry. And then, but you said once, which would have been nice. No, it retried, and then it retried, and then it retried.
You said what
I
would do.
Yeah, and it retried. And then, ideally, yes.
Where's your error handling that bubbles up the error when it doesn't work?
It logs to a log somewhere and then retries, right? And so what's supposed to happen is it retries, and if it works, it's fine. There's no need to
Sure.
error, right? But if it does it perpetually or many times in a row, that's bad. Another thing that I happen to like is to increase the time between retries. So instead of retry every 100 milliseconds or whatever it is configured to, you do, I'm making up 100 for now, 100, 200, 400, 800. I like to double, right? Or do Fibonacci. A handful of times before you just give up, you report the error to somebody and they can jump in. That's not what happened. And then, so it snowballed. It got really bad. It got really backed up. And then it was just a big mess because those queries are blocking other queries. And by the time, and this was after hours, by the time we realized there's a problem, which is bad, we should know, right? It's a message. Why are things so slow? Like SQL Server is just like holding on, like that guy working a Jack in a Box by himself right now, and just trying to make sure things happen. And everyone was just like, "Oh, why is it slow?" No one was finding those timeout errors, just like you said, Lee. No one was getting the errors that it was retrying 1,000 times, and they started resetting things and doing things. Well, remember when I mentioned that like there's the original caller calling these other ones, and they're retrying. Well, when they failed, there was something in the process that I don't understand that was queuing them up. Even though they would like stop and restart, this queue would keep calling. It has something to do with IIS. I don't know.
Oh,
But
no.
something
Okay.
was kept calling. So it was just magnified, right? And then the third party goes, "Oh, well, its process ran every 15 minutes, I think." So every 15 minutes, it'd start the whole thing over again, even though the last one didn't finish. It'd say, "What's changed in the last 20 minutes?"
Yeah.
Get those results, and hit the database again. And it just exploded. So the end result was eventually we figured out the true root cause because we went through like several scenarios, found those found a particular query, noticed that like if the calls per unit of time was orders of magnitude different, and it was parameter sniffing. So query store forced a good plan. That didn't make things better though. Like, why does it make it better? The call's coming back snappy. That's when we realized that there was thousands of calls being cached that would keep coming, even though the question's been answered. It's gonna keep trying. So I ended up having to block that service altogether. Like, you're not allowed to talk to the database. And then I took away its permissions. Everything else, just everything, all the apps coming to start working. CPU like chilled out, and then I gave it a little bit of time, reconnected it. All those thousands of queries that were hitting, they timed out. That timed out. They aired out because they didn't have permission anymore. So rapid fire, nope, 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 and then everything came back up. So yeah, it was a snowball, the Rube Goldberg of errors.
Yeah.
Um,
So, question.
yes.
This is the RCA part. So, was this a stored procedure, or was this like application generated SQL coming in? That what was it?
I'm unsure if I should say it's the second one or not. I mean, it was a query. It was ad hoc, I guess, is what I should call it.
Okay.
It's technically application design though, because how the application works is there's a core query, select columns from table, right? And then depending on what they want, they add a where clause. So like if they're searching by, I'll make up something, first name, where first name equals this. So it technically was generated in the application, but it's not usually ORM, right?
Okay. I was just wondering because if it was a stored procedure, then you could do an SP recompile on the stored procedure, and the next time it got called, you would generate a new query plane. But if it's application code, you can't really do that because
It can be slightly different next time.
it's funny because I almost mentioned this earlier about preventions for emergencies and outages.
Is it to not
Don't
write
let your
inline
applications
SQL?
do that.
Don't write inline SQL code in applications and then
It needs
pass
to
it
be
off to
parameterized and in dynamic SQL like that, especially.
It
I don't
was
know.
parameterized.
Okay,
So
interesting.
they're good about
But it's
that.
not.
This team's good about that. So
So that is one thing that we work together with you, Lee and Anthony, about getting our SQL out of our applications as much as we could and into a store procedure or an API of some sort that we're not directly relating to the database, or directly talking to the database. And I think that also helps with preventing, major outages. Since we're not directly dealing with the database, there's error catching in between us and the database, or the actual servers and the actual data.
that's what
actually
we're moving towards too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was talking to a actually teammate today about some SQL that we're currently doing, which I told you I don't really do SQL anymore, but I don't mess with the actual queries.
Once in a while, yeah.
But then this came up, and it was it's actually it's with Cisco. I can say that. That's a big company. It's to actually interact with Cisco databases through their API, but in their API you pass SQL queries.
Oh, that's fun.
I was like, all right, if that's how we're doing it. So I was telling a teammate today that we're not all the way up on like if it's just C-SQL or ANSI or whatever it is that we're passing. We're just like we're writing very basic SQL to pass. And I was talking about opening transactions, which is the story that we kind of already got into, but I told that story literally yesterday, so I think that's kind of funny that
Yeah.
that was the topic tonight.
So here's another thing you could have done, Anthony, or another thought I had about the situation. So each query text that is similar gets you get a query hash, and that query hash has a plan associated with it. So if you could identify that query hash and plan for the parameter sniffing issue, then you could actually evict that plan from the cache, just that one plan. And the next time that query came through, if it matched the same query hash, it would realize, oh, I don't have a plan, and go make a different one. So that's another thing that you could try next time, if you're interested in something like that. But
Yeah, I end up just forcing the good plan, the plan that's been working for a while, for a very long time, and that seems to take care of the issue. That isn't always.
Nice.
We've seen that. We've seen it where we force it, and then, other things happen. But
Yeah. Cool.
cool. We want to
Okay.
find someone to.
So
raid?
I have a raid target.
Awesome.
Okay, cool. So we're gonna raid Major Linux, but before that, we have
Ooh.
one last announcement that we just confirmed today. That next week we will have the one and only Brofish from Brofish TV on our
Yeah.
on our
Where's the
stream.
applaud track?
Everybody applaud. A good friend of mine. A lot of you guys know Brofish. Those who don't should go check out her channel, Brofish TV. She'll be coming on next week to talk about some technologies in streaming and that she uses, and essentially, I'm gonna try to convince her that she's in IT because most streamers are. Like they really.
They have outages. They have technology. They got to learn it, figure it out, get it to work.
Yeah, there's
It
programming
breaks.
involved. There's a lot of stuff that gets downplayed because it probably goes back to the imposter syndrome thing that we've talked about. But it's one of those, you in this kind of setup, and I don't consider our setup anything super fancy because we're not even affiliated yet. But when you're doing this for a living, that you essentially are your own IT. So when all you do is work with computers and software, you work in IT.
That's IT.
Like, you work in IT.
Yeah,
So
you do.
yeah. So we're gonna kind of go over some of the stuff that she deals with, and maybe get some tips on how to make our stream better. But yeah. So we're really looking forward to it, and really I'll put some promotions out there on Twitter to remind everybody. But yeah, tell your friends. We're kind of bringing a Brofish to town. So
Sounds good.
Exciting. Let's do it. Woo.
all right, and that being said, we're gonna raid Major Linux. So I'll get that going there. Make sure you go check out our Discords, our Discord. Check out our Twitters. Like I said, I'll keep you all up to date on, at least on my Twitter, on any happenings like guests or change in schedules. And
find us on YouTube.
On YouTube. It is in there. And then also, once again, congratulations to Lee for the PASS Community Summit, and looking forward to that. And here is Lee's blog for anybody to go to as well, or his website. So
Very
go
cool.
check him out. And yeah, I am O'Grady.
I'm Anthony.
I'm Lee.
And we will catch you all next week. Peace.
Bye.
Bye.